quickly and we can quickly move ahead to the main agenda. So welcome all to the VKC Story, a reunion of Village Knowledge Center. Hope you all are excited to hear great social initiatives from our IIT Bombay alumni. Let me just give a quick introduction to myself. I passed out in 2014 mechanical engineering. After that, worked in General Motors and currently starting my own entrepreneurial journey in electric vehicle segment. Currently building battery analytics software for electric vehicles and energy storage devices. Quickly, I'll just give the overview of the event. We will start with the introduction to our delegates and then move on to the panel discussion. And at the end of this session, we'll have the Q&A session. Now, to move ahead, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce Devesh Kardu. He joined us as a CEO in 2019. He graduated from IIT Bombay in 1990 from computer science undergrad. Over to you, Devesh.
Thank you, Khushbu. I am particularly delighted to welcome all of you to this event by Bangalore Chapter involving some of our most distinguished alumni from the chapter and to get an opportunity to know more about the VKC program that has been a hallmark of the chapter for the past decade or so. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I would like to welcome all the panelists to this session. About IIT Bombay Alumni Association, most of you are probably familiar with it, but for those that you're not familiar with it, we are a Section 8 non-profit established in 2001, and our mission is to foster strong bonds between alumni, students, and the institute, and to keep alumni informed and create a network to enable them to remain engaged with the alma mater and shape its future through its programs. One of the ways you can do this is by becoming a life member of the association, which allows you to get easy access to the campus with your life membership card. And it also gives you other discounts such as 50% off guest house bookings and so on. We have a few initiatives, including a financial aid program for needy students, a hostel alumni team stewardship program, which improves amenities in hostels, a rural initiative group of which for the Bangalore chapter to do the reunions and chapter events through chapters such as the Bangalore chapter. So we actually have 13 chapters in India and 7 in the rest of the world and 9 in the US. And the way we work is pretty much through our chapters, where individual chapters organize the events and engage alumni in their local geographic areas. So of course, normally your events would be in-person events, but due to the pandemic, we are now having online events. And I would like to especially congratulate Bangalore chapter on making this seamless transition and having a very full slate of such events over the past few weeks. So at this point, I would like to introduce our chief guest for the evening, who is actually the chairman of the IIT Bombay Alumni Association, Mr. Dhananjay Saiba. So we know him as Shiba, and so I'm just going to refer to him as Shiba in my introduction. So Shiba graduated from IIT Bombay with a BTech in 1977 in electrical engineering. And he's a founder and managing director of iJunction, which is a company focused on value-added telecom services. So after graduating from IIT Bombay, Shiba completed his MS in WD from Columbia University in 1979 and got an additional qualification in WD from the same university the next year. He spent the bulk of his career in the telecom sector, starting with AT&T Bell Labs in 1984, and undertook various assignments with AT&T in the area of development and marketing, including a stint in New Delhi as the director of the marketing transmission systems there. He then joined Hughes Telecom as CTO in the year 2000 and was responsible for developing new products and services there. Following the takeover by the Tatas, he was appointed as Vice President NPI, where he spearheaded the development of new products. In the year 2008, with encouragement and backing of his classmate Kiran Roshania from IIT Bombay, he ventured out on his own with iJunction. Shiba has taken a keen interest in IIT Bombay and has been an active participant in alumni activities of the class of 77. He was one of the key leaders of the team that successfully organized the 25th reunion of the batch. The team, in fact, initiated a donation drive during the reunion and carried it on for the next few years. He also played a vital role in the 35th reunion of his batch in 2012. Um, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Award by IIT Bombay in the following year. He continues to be at the forefront of donation programs to the institute, as well as other alumni activities such as student mentoring, and of course now he's the chair of the Alumni Association. A lot of people are also aware that Shiva is an accomplished photographer, but not many know that he's also tried his hand at acting in a Hindi movie, which was made for television. In my debut movie, one of the first scenes I had to do was a song and dance sequence, which was one of the toughest things I've ever done. After the third take, the director walked up to me and said, "Shiva, you have no rhythm," according to him. On that note, I'll hand it over to Dhananjay Saiba or Shiva. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Devesh. It's a pleasure to hear all this stuff about you that you yourself had perhaps forgotten, I guess. But it's wonderful to be here. Obviously the VKC program has been a great success, and I understand that it was started in 2004, long before the internet and so forth were so common, ubiquitous around India. And you guys have all done a great job. And so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about VKC. That is your job. You guys are going to do all of that. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about something really different. One thing that I would like to point out, which is really nothing to do with IIT as such, but since I am part of the telecom industry, and I have spent my career, I mean, I joined the telecom industry in 1984. So I spent the bulk of my career in telecom. And AT&T, when I joined, it was AT&T had just split up. But before that, AT&T was the largest company in the world. And its motto was a phone in every home. And its advertising tagline was reach out and touch someone. And if you think about it, this whole pandemic that we are now going through has been made much more tolerable, precisely because the telecom network has worked so very, very well. Right? We are now able to talk to anybody in the world. We can exchange messages, we can send pictures, we can send videos and stuff like that. And in the absence of all of that, the pandemic would have been much worse than it is. I mean, especially I think for mental health. So perhaps that's something that you guys, that we all need to think about and perhaps take advantage of and do something with, right? In terms of bringing the community, the whole world and community together, especially India, across the diaspora, and doing something for India. So now what I would like to do is talk a little bit about the AA and IIT. The AA was started, I guess, about around 2000 or something like that, or the late 90s, and it was the vision of Professor Sukatne, who was the director then. But after that, the relationship between the AA and the institute was quite rocky, and we didn't really do much in terms of AA was not a significant part of the institute. I mean, the institute did not perceive the AA as a significant partner in its existence. But now that whole situation has changed, and it has changed very dramatically. The government of India, perhaps rightly so, has gotten up and said, guys, we have supported you now for 60 years. Now it's time for you to grow up and become an independent institution by yourself. And perhaps they're right. And for us, as the institute and the alumni, it represents a fantastic opportunity for us to do something truly significant. So for instance, now we have started taking up a big, like the latest with the pandemic, the institute suddenly realized that there were a lot of young kids who may not be able to access the internet and so forth, and therefore may not be able to do the studying from home that they needed to do. And so we organized the program to raise money. And in about, Namita or Devesh can correct me, I think in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, not more, in about 3 to 4 weeks, we managed to raise about 4 crores around the world, which, I mean, I don't think we've raised that kind of money ever before that quickly. So I'm pretty confident that all of us working together and focusing on various areas, uh, will be able to help the institute out, because what has now happened with the institute is that they have been told that the government will guarantee the salaries of the people, of the staff. But beyond that, all capital expenditures, buildings that you need to build, hostels that you need to build, and so forth, institute will have to raise money, or if the government provides money, it will be on a 10-year loan basis. And for all of the research programs, whatever you need for the research programs, the government. So right now, at the moment, the institute has plans to set up some labs and so forth in about 5 different areas, and the whole program is going to cost about 2,200 crores, 2,200 crores. And out of that, the government has given a grant of only 1,000 crores. So that 1,000 crores will be available when and only when IIT raises the additional 1,200 crores that it needs. So if they don't manage to raise the money, then they will not be able to do what they need to do. So this is a fantastic opportunity, and I would like to appeal to all of you. I know we are a lot of very, very distinguished alumni here. In fact, I think the whole gang who has been on the VKC program who are here, part of the panel, just about everybody is distinguished alumnus of one kind or the other. And if they're not, then it's an oversight on the part of the institute, rather than a reflection on the caliber of your work. So with that, I will turn the mic over to you guys to continue with your program. Thank you very, very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dhananjay sir. Thank you so much for the insights and as well as the great work that you guys have been doing. Thanks a lot for joining us today and your time. Let me just quickly invite Mr. PSV Anantha Narayan, who is currently the Vice Chairman, IIT Alumni Center, Bangalore. He has been founder president of the Bangalore Chapter. Also, he was one of the organizers of IIT 50 event in Bangalore in February 2003. And also as a recipient of prestigious Distinguished Service Award in 2004 from IIT Bombay for outstanding contribution to his alma mater and society. Over to you, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, and good evening to all.
Good evening.
Well, it gives me great pleasure to get virtually connected to the initial team, I would say, of the VKC.
Our pleasure.
To specify names, I would say Ashok Kamath, Samir Kumar, Paresh Vora, Mr. Baligar, Srikant Rao, Sanjay Jain, Saumil, Ajit Fadnavis, and of course I see that one person is missing, which is Anil Pandit, who was our treasurer at that particular point in time. And also I would like to congratulate Smita and her team for having set up this reunion. And it's great to reconnect with the VKC Story, which used to be one of the flagship initiatives of the IIT Bombay Alumni Association. But in the present terms, I mean, I'm not very sure as to how much of the VKC will be relevant. I'm saying that in the current times, because VKC was very much relevant as far as 2004 was concerned. But in 2020, I think, well, every child in a village, has a smartphone in his or her hand. And I think she's got all the knowledge, available at her fingertips. However, coming back to the story on the VKC, I would say that, of course, we were inspired by the vision document of the late President, Dr. Kalam, who said that he wanted to provide knowledge connectivity to all villages in the country via technology. And so at that particular point in time, you know, the bunch of the group in Bangalore actually quickly discussed as to what exactly needs to be provided. And at that particular point in time, we decided that we need to empower children and villagers by equipping them with a library and a set of computers. So the idea primarily of the VKC was, one, to encourage reading as a habit among children in villages, you know, so that, you know, it increases the literacy among rural India. You see, that was one of the prime objectives. And I think we must thank Ashok Kamath, you know, who, for having supplied a lot of books, you know, from Akshara Foundation, you know, to set up this particular center. The second was to impart education through computers to children as well as adults in villages. And the third one was, I'm not very sure as to how much was it that we were able to achieve. That is to provide, I would say, small value-added services, you know, to the villagers, you know, especially filling up small or simple forms, you know, to either get his death certificate or birth certificate or maybe a caste certificate. Because villages, you know, in Karnataka was already very strong, you know, in setting up centers, you know, like Nemadi Kendra, they call it in Karnataka, where all services of the government are easily available. And but at the village level, you know, I think these facilities were not there. And therefore, we were trying to connect. I'm not very sure. Maybe Srikanth Rao can subsequently let us know whether they were able to achieve it subsequently. And as the particular project was primarily connected with the setting up of the VKC in the villages, we thought that it was appropriate for us to take the help of the rural development in the Panchayat Raj department. And fortunately, at that particular point in time, we had Mr. VP Baligar, who is also on this panel today as the then Principal Secretary of the RDPR. And he was very kind enough to immediately put us in touch with a couple of Panchayat development officers. And he said that pick up any one of them. And therefore, after visiting a couple of the villages and meeting the Panchayat officers, we were able to actually finally center around Ittamadu, which is about 50 kilometers away from Bangalore. Now, one of the prerequisites that we put forth to the Panchayat development officers were that they should provide the particular space for setting up the center, to provide us, power as well as, and pay for the power as well as the telephone charges, that is for the internet. And thirdly, also pay for a particular, operator to take care of the particular VKC. So at that particular point in time, what we did was we quickly took this particular project to the IIT board and then got it ratified for presenting it. And I think IIT Alumni Association in Bombay actually accepted this particular project. So the first initiative started. However, what happened was that when we were talking about the story part of it, when we visited the particular place that was identified and then given to us, we found that the entire building was in a dilapidated condition, and therefore the whole building had to be redone. And fortunately, the Panchayat authorities did give us the building in a very good condition, maybe after about 2-3 months. So the estimated cost at that particular point in time was somewhere around 1.5 or 2 lakhs. And fortunately, at that particular point in time, the Bangalore chapter had the requisite funds. You didn't have to actually ask the Bombay, the parent body, for any funding at that particular point in time. These particular funds were through the IIT 50 celebrations, the excess of money that was got was given to the Bangalore chapter. And therefore, that is how, we were able to actually source the particular computers and set up the entire infrastructure. So thanks also should be mentioned to two other people. That is, one is Samir and Srikanth, for having actually got us some discounts, on getting the computers and the power packs and as well as the voltage stabilizers, to set up this particular system. And very soon, once all these particular equipments were ready and then the building was in place, we were all set, for setting up the center. And once we then requested Mr. Baligar, who was still the Principal Secretary, Panchayat Raj, to inaugurate. And eventually on sometime in April of 2005, we set up the first center. I'm sure that, of course, subsequent to this particular thing, setting up of the center at Itamadu, the group that was there, myself, who was the founder president, and then Ashok Kamath, Samir, and others, our term got ended, and then it was taken over by Sanjay Jain, Saumil, Srikanth Rao, and others. And they definitely did expand the particular VKC. And you can hear more of it, on the expansion of how they made it, happen from Srikanth Rao. And I'm not very sure as to how many of these centers are now live and kicking. And maybe that also Srikanth Rao can actually give us an idea as to what is the current status of these particular VKCs, if at all they are functioning or they have been dismantled. But before, I think Srikanth can actually come on and then give his particular perspective, how he was able to actually take this forward. I would request that the other members in the team, who were there initially, Kamath, Samir, Mr. Baligar, to say a few words as to what really kicked into their vision of seeing and the setting up of this particular center. So over to you back, Namita?
Yeah, yes, sir. Khushbu here.
Yeah, Khushbu. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's great to hear your work and how you help the villagers, and it's very exciting to see. You were able to make the place in Panchayat, which I think would be a really tough job at a local level. We are really excited to hear different stories from our panelists. So let me not waste time and just quickly introduce our panelist as well as our moderator and Srikanth Rao sir, so that we can move ahead with the panel discussion. I'll just give a very brief introduction of each of the panelists here. Let me start with you again, sir. Anantha Narayan, MSc Mathematics 1975, currently Vice President, IIT ACB. Mr. VP Baligar, BTech Civil Engineering, 1978, IIS Karnataka, retired currently. Mr. Ashok Kamath, MSc Mathematics, 1981, Chairman, Akshara Foundation. Paresh Vora, BTech Electrical Engineering, 1981, Director, Indian Operations, Win Foundation. Sameer Kumar, BTech EE 1984, MD Invitus India. Sanjay Jain, BTech CSC 1987, Partner Bharat Innovation Fund. Saumil Majudar, BTech MEMS 1993, Co-founder EduSpots. Dr. Ajit Fadnis, BTech Electrical Engineering 2004, Assistant Professor, IIM Indore. Gaurav Porwal, dual degree Chemical Engineering 2005, Vice President at Ola. Also, I'll introduce our moderator for the panel discussion, Pramod Kumar, BTech Chemical Engineering 2015, CBO Attend-U. Over to you, Pramod.
Hey, thanks, Khushbu. Thanks all the panelists. So let's first start with the story of the Village Knowledge Center, so also known as VKC. So Anant has given us a very good brief. And now I would like to invite Mr. Shrikant sir to take us through the story from the beginning. Over to you, Mr. Shrikant sir.
Okay.
Shrikant,
Hello.
I think let us actually ask the other 5 or 6 people who were there initially to come, and then because you have actually taken it to a different level, so let them actually give their perspective as to what really they went in, into actually getting this particular setup.
Yeah. And that's a plan. So
Yeah.
let me run through that. Okay.
Sure. Now, before you start your story, actually, because you took it to a different level altogether, so
Right.
let us hear from Mr. Baligar, Mr. Kamath, Samir, Paresh. So let us just hear maybe for a few minutes as to what really kicked in.
That's what I'm going to be doing.
Sure.
All
right. Thank you.
Just Anand, I thought let us hear from Shrikant Rao to what level he has taken, because that's very important. My intervention will be something different, because I was there only in initial period, and later on I understand that VKC IITBAA is not functioning. So I would like to know the status of other VKCs, if at all they have been started. Then maybe I can intervene and share my experience as such on any social development project.
Right, sir.
Right.
So, but what I was saying is there were others, like Kamath, Samir, Paresh Vora, who were there initially. So they can actually come in and then Shrikant can take over.
Yeah, Anant, that is what I'm planning to do. So,
Sure.
So let me do that. Right. Can somebody put on the presentation, please?
Yeah, Vidyut.
Vidyut?
Put on the presentation. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Can you guys see this presentation? All right.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. So this was started, as I said, in 2004, and we actually put a whole story together, including a logo and a website and all this good stuff that we take for granted today, which was really not there at that point of time. Okay. The next slide, please. Next one. After that. Yeah. So as Anant said, this was the original motivation or the trigger for looking at this type of a operation. Literally a challenge from Dr. Kalam saying, how can, the next slide, how can an IIT team adopt a village and create a village knowledge center? Okay, and based on this vision and this challenge, the IIT Bombay Alumni Association in Bangalore adopted one village, or wanted to set up one village knowledge center. Yeah, next slide, please. And so this was the village, a photo of that village taken way back in 2004, I think. All right. Yeah, next slide. Yeah. And in 2005, yeah, next slide. This Village Knowledge Center was inaugurated by a much younger Mr. Baligar. Baligar sir, can you remember this? There's Anant behind you.
I lost one there.
Yeah, all of us, all of us. Right. So I thought we'll run you through this so that, it will jog all our memories and give us some nostalgic memories as well, right? So this was what we did at that point on 2005. It took us about a year to set this whole thing up. Yeah. As Anant said, next slide, please. The first hut which was given to us in a dilapidated condition is visible on the left. And that was the hut which got transformed into the first village knowledge center. Okay, this was in the heart of the village. And so here is where I'd like to stop and invite Ashok and Samir and others to come in and just talk about what they felt at that point of time when we started working on this project. Anant?
Yeah.
Okay, Ashok, can you take on, please? Right, because we had taken up this challenge and then we go and see this hut and we looked at each other and said, what are we trying to achieve, right? And so what was going on in your mind and what did you think will happen?
Okay, so this is 2005.
Right.
And I had quit my job in 2004 to work full-time in the development sector in actually on April 1st, 2004. That was full-time, right? So don't confuse that with April Fool's Day because it was serious. And I've been in the development sector ever since then. And we had also, so Akshara was also at that point doing a lot of work, in the literacy and foundational learning stages of children all across Bangalore. And we were just starting to move out of Bangalore. So this was a nice vehicle for me, both from the perspective of the IIT Bombay Alumni Association, as well as from the Akshara Foundation, where I was, working. And so I managed to get, at that point, I think, a couple of hundred books, I don't remember now. That was the seeds of the library. And we had all the library processes and all that thing, organized, because that was what we were doing at Akshara. And we kind of migrated all of that to this IITBAA VKC at that point. And in my mind, I think the fond dream was that we could create a sustainable model that could be replicated across the country. And when I say sustainable, it means that, we had thought of having the computer out there and a trained person who could generate operating revenue for the place by doing small jobs like Anand said, like, putting birth and death registration certificates, land boundaries and stuff like that. So, these farmers have to do a lot of these little things all the time, and they go far away. So we said, if this guy could be empowered to do it, and the farmers pay 10 rupees for it, that could be, a few hundred rupees that comes to maintain the place. We also had thought of keeping a little daily newspaper and, magazines for older people to come in and read as well. So it was not only for children, it was also for the older people to come in and read. And that's why on the right-hand side photo, I think it's probably because it was one of the older ones come to read a newspaper, I hope anyway. So this is the sustainable part of it. And we wanted to make the design so simple that it could be replicated anywhere else. That was the fond dream. So the seeds were sown, and then I think at that point we handed over to Shrikant and the next generation.
Right. Thanks, Ashok. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah. So in 4 years, the VKC really did sustain itself with the active cooperation and support of the Panchayat itself. One of the points which really still rings in my mind is a statement made by Mr. Baligar right in the beginning. When we first went and visited the village, he said, just keep all your preconceived notions aside. Don't think that you can bring your urban thoughts into rural India. Listen to what the people there are saying, what their aspirations are, and that is going to be your key to success. Mr. Baligar, can you remember that statement, please?
Yeah.
Right?
Let's go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
So based on that, we actually worked very closely with the Panchayat and, more important, the people concerned. And when the Panchayat was reconstructing their own building, which was like an old hut, and you see the building on the left, that is their new Panchayat office. The entire ground floor, which you see on the right, was handed over to us to set up and expand our VKC. Okay? So in 4 years, we actually won the trust and faith of the local community. And I think there were already 2 changes in the Panchayat in terms of elections. But despite elections and changes of guard, the VKC survived and sustained itself. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah. And so this was what it looked like inside. Ashok, that was a library on the right. And if you see the background, that was the computer center, where we had started with just 2 PCs and 1 printer in the old dilapidated hut. We actually set up a set of, I think, about 8 workstations. All these were thin clients linked to a central PC, which acted like a virtual server. So fair bit of technology brought in with the UPS, which could sustain itself for 8 hours in a day and charge in 4 hours, and so on and so forth. Samir, can you talk a little bit about this phase and what your thoughts were or when you see this photograph?
So I think, Shrikant, thanks. Anand, Ashok, and you have covered a lot of it. Clearly, I think we were charged at that time. I recall just the camaraderie, the trips that we made, the multiple trips. I got to know younger guys like Ajit, Gaurav, and so on. Of course, we knew Shrikant, Ashok, Anant Narayan, and Mr. Baligar reasonably well then. I recall the look on the faces of those kids there the first time the computer started. And, those were fond memories. The regret I have is that we tried to involve alumni to sort of continue it. We took bus loads of Bangalore alumni to that center. I think twice we did it. Regret alumni involvement was not as high as maybe some of us expected. I lost energy after a couple of years and couldn't sustain my involvement. But whatever time I was involved, it was a great experience.
Yeah, thanks, Amir. Paresh?
Yeah.
Before you
Hello.
left, Paresh, before you left Bangalore and went back to Gujarat, where all the action is right now, what do you think
We
is
don't
happening
know.
here? Especially working in an environment with where the language barrier was really an issue. What was your thoughts, Paresh? Because one of the points that most alumni say that they don't want to continue this was because of the language barrier. So where do you see that as an issue, Paresh?
I do remember that, I also remember that actually Samir, although he said he lost time, he actually learned Kannada. And I think in one of his subsequent visits, he started talking in Kannada to the villagers, because I remember the distinct, I also learned it, but never practiced to speak it. So, effectively, I didn't learn it. We tried to study it, but
I think I've just, up, yes.
But I think I would just reiterate what Samir said. That was the first time. It was the first time which I was involved in an alumni activity in this manner. And it kept on. I think that kudos to Shrikant, that we all came in when some other people joined after 2 years, who were active for another 2 years, then some other people came, things like that. Shrikant was the continuous one person who actually continued it in that sense. And we did get to see this wonderful building. So that was a great satisfaction. That meant that the village, and I also remember once either it was a local MLA or was it some other politician who came and said, when we were selecting a place, he said, "Hamare village mein aap laga do." Of course, he said it in probably Kannada, but so that was a recognition that guy is also realizing the value of it. We didn't accede to his demand. We put where it was already decided, but that means people wanted it, and I think that was a good recognition. It was first real exposure to village for some of us. Really, we would have obviously visited earlier. I was also part of a Rotary Club, and we had a similar project in another village. But basically, interacting with village people and all, although language was a barrier, but we could interact because people somehow do, try to explain themselves. But that was first real, and also first real alumni involvement for me, which then continued in Ahmedabad, and then thanks to Deepak Sheth and Bakul, who when I went to Ahmedabad, they had realized, first of all, thanks to the people here who put me into this project. And then in Ahmedabad, I was pushed into this. And then actually Bakul said, why don't you come to IITBAA board also. So I think that was a great feeling that actually, and it's all wonderful people. I think the main thing is camaraderie, that we really enjoyed being together. Samir, so at least Samir I knew from before because of other Wipro relationships and all. Ashok Kamath and Anant and Shrikant, then later on Gaurav. So wonderful to know people. And which continued with that alumni involvement, then it continued and allowed me to know so many other people. So that was great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paresh. And I think we'll never forget all those dosas that we ate at Halli Mane on the way, where we would meet just before, go out early in the morning on a Saturday morning, reach there by 8 o'clock, 8:30, breakfast, and then go to the village, come back by lunchtime. Somil, just before we go on to the slide, the first computers, etc., were funded by the funds which are available in the association. But to set up this type of, at that time, this was pretty fancy for a village, having 5, 6, 8 PC workstations and laptops and furniture and all that. So how did you fund all this? I remember we had a lot of fun organizing a fundraiser. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Somil.
Sure, Shrikant. This is bringing up a whole host of memories. But I will talk about the interesting fundraiser, but I just want to take a small segue into when I got connected to the Alumni Association when I came to Bangalore in 2003, 2004, came back to Bangalore. And, Samir, Anant, Ashok, everybody was doing this VKC was just taking shape. And I remember one discussion where I said, look, this is all great, but what about the younger alumnus who still want to have some fun, still want to connect, who still want to network? And there's this two distinct, if I may say, interest streams that came out about how alumni need to be engaged. And I think the fundraise event that we did was in some sense a culmination of those two streams. So we were trying to raise money. We also tried to get alumni to be involved in VKC. And, I think Shrikant and all of you, I think your weekly or fortnightly rhythm was just amazing. I think we should just keep visiting, and that I think created a lot of positive energy for everybody else. So in trying to engage, and the other discussion that happened was, is it only IIT Bombay? Is it across IITs? And that's where we came up with this idea of doing an inter-IIT music festival. I forget which year it was, Shrikant, but
2008, 2009. Yeah. That funded this.
Correct. So we said we'll do an inter-IIT music festival, and then I must say, to fund VKC, and I must say all the other IIT associations really stepped up very well. And we had folks like Dilip Panikar from the IIT Madras side and a bunch of other people who got together. And we actually had a fun evening. Was it a Royal Orchid? If I'm not
Royal Orchid, yeah.
Royal Orchid.
Yeah, and we had this amazingly talented and amazingly qualified people singing Bollywood and otherwise songs. It was just fantastic. We sold tickets for it. And those tickets were Shrikant's idea. We're trying very hard to get sponsorship. And I remember Shrikant sitting me down and saying, you know what, these IIT guys, they can afford $750 for the evening of hearing a lot of other IIT guys sing. Don't depend on sponsorship. Let's just charge enough money so that we cover our costs. And if we get any sponsorship, then that's over and above. And we raised 2.5 lakhs, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
And I was a treasurer, so it was about double that. I didn't tell you guys that so much money was raised.
So we had around 350 odd people showing up for that evening. And I think it also created a lot of good connections across all other IITs. And I think VKC was a great head of the arrow to just bring all of those IIT alumni together as well. It was a combination of good fun and a social cause. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Somil. So next slide, please. So we're talking about what was all this all about. What was this Village Knowledge Center all about? And going back, the fundamental point was, how do we get children and adults to use the internet, to use computers, learn how to use the computers. And also, to some extent, at that point of time, we didn't have a proper internet connectivity, but we did have Skype. So the idea was, how could we use Skype and start teaching village students things like spoken English, where the tutors could be sitting in Bangalore and other places. So there was some experimentation that we did fairly successfully at that point of time. In order to maintain some sustainability, we said, can this Village Knowledge Center evolve into a center where government to citizen or business to citizen services can be offered at a fee. We also had some pretty ambitious thoughts of having a rural BPO set up and so on. Pretty interesting to note that over the last decade and a half, all this is actually a reality. What sounded like science fiction and impossible tasks 15 years ago, they've all evolved to become reality. And that's something we'll come back to at the end of the session. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this was the type of activity where we had kids logging into the computers, studying on their own, figuring out how this stuff works and so on. But in addition to just computers and library work, we also engaged with the community and the kids in a pretty interesting manner. Ajit, Gaurav, maybe you can talk about that painting competition. Were you guys there involved in that? Hello?
I don't recall Shrikant on the painting one.
Okay. So we did have, we organized a painting competition for all the villages in and around Ittamadu, and we got all the children to come from the various schools so that we could showcase the VKC to them. And that was a pretty interesting scenario. We had some of our alumni kids. I remember my kids also coming along and doing a painting when we distributed painting kits to everybody. Okay. So that was one way by which we could engage with the local community as well. Okay. Next slide, please. Right. So yeah, I can see Sanjay there. So Sanjay, I'll bring you in. Sanjay, once we established the VKC in Ittamadu, that took us about 5 years. The neighboring village called Mela Gopahalli invited us to set up shop there. And Sanjay, you can talk a little bit about that part of the project.
Yeah, no, so it is fantastic. And in fact, if I, and the fact is that, we've been working on this for such a long time. I think right from the first VKC, and then I think once that establishment happened, then the neighboring VKC also was excited about bringing, and neighboring village is also excited about setting up such a center. And I think this was just after your painting competition. In fact,
right.
Trying to collect if it was the same trip or perhaps, like a few months apart when we went over there, and it was, and this time actually we set it up inside a school, if I recollect correctly.
Correct. The headmaster was the catalyst, and he actually set the whole thing up.
Correct.
Made it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and and I remember going in there and figuring out how to, where it was being set up and the inauguration, and I think all the kids are very excited because this was primarily meant for them, and it was quite a fun experience. And of course, I still don't speak Kannada, and that was always a challenge. And I think somebody in the audience asked about that, but I think we were able to manage. I mean, while there was a barrier, I don't think it was big enough. I mean, people were able to convey what they wanted, and we could respond back. And there's always somebody to help with, translating a few words here and there to make the communication complete. I don't recollect. I think here we started with one computer again, right? Shrikant, if you remember.
2 computers, yeah. 2 computers. Because we said what was proven in Ittamadu we'll do here.
Repeat.
And
so
let's see how the other experiment works later. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the next slide. Thanks, Sanjay. Yeah, I think then about a year after this, we organized a session where we got panchayats from 3 different villages in Sira and Tumkur districts to come to Ittamadu and Melgopalli. There was a bus organized, a full day workshop, a session. And, after demonstrating, and the presentations were made by the local panchayat guys rather than IITB chapter. Okay. Ajit, were you involved here? Ajit?
No. I mean, I was there for one of the sessions. I think Siddharth Joshi was there. Yeah, Siddharth Joshi was along with you at that time.
Right. And Gaurav, you were also part of this team by that time, right? 2010, 2011?
No, I left Bangalore in 2009, early 2009.
Okay. So that was after Melagopalli. Then we said, the key was, again, going back to what Mr. Baligar said, getting the commitment and the faith and trust of the local community and the commitment of the panchayat. Without that, you cannot make it sustainable. So the whole pitch was to get them on board. And so we used the success story of Itamadu to get the commitment and the support of the other panchayats. So in Sira and Tumkur, etc., we set up 3 VKCs at one stretch. Okay, this was in 2013. That was probably 4 years after the Itamadu project became successful. Next slide. Yeah, and the same success in all these places. We had the school kids coming in immediately after school, and when the parents saw the kids like this in the village, and this was not just when we were there; it was there on a day-to-day occasion. The parents started saying, "Hey, this is something which is fantastic," and they supported us all the way. Okay. Ajit, can you talk a little bit about your experiences? And Gaurav, you too, please. Yeah. Go ahead, Ajit.
I mean, obviously, it was great fun. I mean, are you talking about this particular aspect or general?
In general, and in this aspect. Anything specific that you would like to mention, which I may have.
Of course, there are a lot of specific and funny moments.
Yeah.
I mean, all of us. Gaurav was around. Then we had Kapil Shukla. He was around. Then Siddharth Joshi. So a lot of us had a lot of fun. And of course, we got this opportunity to meet so many of our alumni. We were pretty much batchmates, but it was a lot of fun. Going to Kadumane with Shrikant, Sanjay, Anand Narayan, Sir Ashok, got to meet Ashok Kamath, was able to meet Baligar Sir, Samir. I mean, it was a great opportunity. It was a great learning experience for us. And it was a lot of fun, and we really enjoyed the company of everybody. And for many of us, I think this was one of our early exposures to the social sector, working on community issues. And I think somewhere this laid the seeds in some of us, and many of us have kind of also gone on to do similar work, or broadly at least work in these sectors. Like, for example, I went on to do a PhD in public policy. Gaurav did great work in healthcare. Siddharth Joshi has gone on to do great work working with manual scavengers. So I think somewhere, it's not only about the impact that we did for the village, but also the effect that has had in our own lives. And in many ways, it has kind of changed the track by which we looked at our own careers and what we want to do in future. So that's my initial reaction. Of course, I'll turn it on to Gaurav, and I've also got Siddharth here on the panel.
Wonderful.
It would be great to also hear.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Gaurav, Siddharth.
Yeah. So as what Paresh also mentioned a little while back, and what Ajit said, I think for me it was just a purely selfish reason, right? I had just moved back to India in early 2007, right, and knew nobody, right, and so it was first to get to meet IIT Bombay alums and just have some fun, right, and for a single guy who knows nobody, right, with not excellent skills with the opposite sex, right, it's just a good thing.
I remember that motivation very, very clearly, my friend.
Yes. right? And that fantastic Sunday breakfast, right? That's where I got introduced to so many new things with Hatta Idli and, good filter coffee and all those things. And I think, yes, and slowly this, and that's when the whole concept started resonating with me, right? After a few trips that, yes, this is something that while we are busy with our usual lives and, just standard corporate jobs, I think there is something that you can do, right? And I think that also helped shape my worldview going forward when I sort of started a healthcare company to take healthcare to tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? And I think this was a great exposure, for that purpose that I kind of built over time. And of course, the number of friendship is just so great to be connected all over again after almost 11 years, right? It's just fantastic. And yes, I came to Bangalore recently after almost 11 years, and then everybody is stuck at home. So I do hope that we'll all have a beer soon in person. But I think that was the power of that thing, that anybody who got associated with it, I think, of course, there's an IIT Bombay bond, but this thing even transcended that. And the whole musical night thing, that was again a great chance to interact with alums across IITs, right? And put some of my skills at display as well. So I think all over it was just in that limited 2 year, I think I personally gained immensely from this whole thing. And absolute kudos to Shrikant in particular, right? For just being there, just being there, anchoring the whole thing. It was like he was the island, in a river. There just people kept coming and going, but he was there. So
very true, very true.
So I just want to mention one incident that happened between when both Gaurav and me went to the village, and that was the first day when internet connection. We took months. All of us worked for months, and then finally we got internet connection, and then we went to the village, and then we were just curious. Okay, what are these people doing around? How are they using the internet? So we went to the search history. And we were shocked at what they were really we were really shocked at what our hard work was being used for. And Gaurav was just out from a Vipassana program, and in spite of all that, he could not control his anger and he was blasting people there. You want to say something about that, Gaurav?
Yeah, I said, I just remember that. Yes, it was right, and I think it was what Shrikant mentioned, that again just the immaturity, right, of even us, that we believing that we are trying to do so much for these guys, and they are just trying to take advantage of it. So but yeah, I think technology does have side effects, and I think that was also our phase of learning of how to control all that. And maybe just they were exploring things as well. I don't know how we kind of manage that going forward.
I mean, ऐसे sites निकाले जो IIT वाले खुद नहीं ढूंढ पा रहे.
Ajit, you said somebody else was there?
Yeah, Siddharth is around. Siddharth Joshi. Yeah. Siddharth, can you unmute yourself and say something? Okay, maybe he's not able. Yeah.
All right. So let's move on. So after Sira and Tunkur started, we started working with 5 VKCs at a time, and that was the next slide, please. And that was becoming pretty incredible. It was just not manageable. So we decided, let's work with another NGO which is already involved in these activities and let them manage the day-to-day operations. So we connected with an organization called Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement, and they took over some of these activities. So we funded them and they were managing the situation. They had a program on Radio FM at that time where they talked about the VKC, and this gentleman from a village called Mittur in Kolar district heard them on the radio, called me up, and then said, listen, we want a VKC in our village. And this was IIT Bombay Alumni Association didn't fund anything. the entire expenditure for the PCs, the networking, everything was funded by the local panchayat in Kolar. Okay, so we actually set up, the next slide please, 2 VKCs in Kolar district, okay, in 2013. So we had 2 in south of Bangalore, that is south of Bangalore, but 40-50 kilometers south of Bangalore. We had 3 in Tumkur, which is towards Bombay. And we had 2 village knowledge centers in Kolar, which is right on the east side of Bangalore. So, so east, west, and north. And this was becoming very, very unwieldy. So in a way, it was great because the project was successful. The objective was getting achieved. But how do we run this going forward? That became an issue. And so the next slide. Yeah, this was the challenge. We had 5 or 6 villages, but there were 1,700 odd panchayats to go. And money was an issue. How do you manage the whole show? Okay. And I think this is where the project came to a halt. Go to the next slide, please. So we presented this to the IIT Bombay Alumni Association. I think that was in Goa. Mr. Parikar was the host when he was the chief minister. And then after that, the project really did not continue post 2013. Okay. So Mr. Baligar, to answer your first question, where are we today? After 2013, IIT Bombay Alumni Association, Bangalore Chapter sort of phased out of this whole project. The local panchayats continued the project to some extent. But I think what has happened is they've all evolved into the Common Services Center or the local village panchayat. And that's where it is. So the VKCs as we had seen them no longer exist. But I think the objectives that we wanted have typically been achieved in terms of connecting rural India to the digital world. Okay. So at this stage, maybe I'd like you to come in and speak a few words, Mr. Baligar.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry, I don't have power now, but I'm staying in some area where sunlight comes.
Okay.
Some electrical repairs are going on.
Right.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this meeting. And it's nearly 15 years ago that I was involved with the VKC. I was so happy to be in touch with our IIT friends, especially youngsters. They were so enthusiastic, innovative, and they really put a lot of efforts in making this dream of Dr. Abdul Kalam a reality. At least in the beginning, of course, you had a lot of problems. You overcame that, implemented this VKC, and later on expanded it to one more village near Bidadi. And later on, I'm so happy to know that you have even moved to Shira in Tumkur district. And later on, another 2 villages in Kolar district. I think you have done a great job. There was a lot of involvement of youngsters. And you also try to involve the local youths and panchayats. But still, I think we need to have some introspection and also see why, especially the Ittamadu VKC is not functioning as on today. After Smita told me that if people are trying to get what has happened in Ittamadu, wanted to get some status report, I asked for it to know what has happened. She could not get, I think there was a lot of problem in connecting to the persons who were involved earlier in the village. Then I got a report from my Jilla Panchayat, though I'm retired now. Some of my old friends that are still there. Then only day before yesterday, I got some reports saying that Ittamadu VKC is not functioning. There are 2 reasons. One is this Ittamadu has now become an urban area. It's part of Bidadi Purasabhe. So Panchayat is not really involved in it. So Jilla Panchayat and rural development are not in touch with that. But even then, my officer sent me a report saying that there are no funds in Bidadi Purasabhe. Therefore, it is not functioning. It happens in the government that there's change of power structure or change of jurisdiction and leadership. But at the same time, I would request our own alumni association to work towards, learn from this project and work towards ownership. Ownership from both the sides. One is from our side, that is alumni association should own the projects initiated by the or handed over to or wherever we work. So we have to create ownership from the other side, where we are implementing our social development project. If we can own it for forever, yes, we have to continue our efforts in connecting in a different way, not necessarily funding, but maybe handholding, knowledge. There may be quantum jump in technology, introducing them to new technologies. So that kind of involvement is necessary from our side. So that kind of ownership of the projects that we have initiated, not necessarily complete involvement, but still some kind of intellectual input will have to be there for the project to continue. But at the same time, we'll have to somehow devise some way of creating ownership from the village side, or it may be a slum area or in any other social development project you take. Uh-oh.
I think his electricity is dropped. Hello?
Yeah, he was on the phone, but I think.
Yeah, I think his. Okay, so till he comes back on, let me speak a few more words about what Mr. Baligar had kept saying. How do you keep the involvement of the local community? I think, and that's the critical message and learning that we all had as part of the project. I think all of us have benefited a lot by this. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, next one. Yeah. We didn't really do a proper analysis of what was happening, what was the impact study. I mean, we didn't really run it like a formal NGO. And I think that was the critical learning for me, that it's all nice to have these good intentions, but if you want to sustain it, you have to run it in a very professional manner, get proper funding, get proper results, and get the consumer, in this case the villagers, to accept and say that this is what they want. Okay? So some of the feedback we got was more anecdotal, like what you read here. The next slide. But this is a slide that, or this is a photograph that I can never forget. This was the first VKC when it went live in Itamadu. This was a snap that I took with a very, very old mobile phone. Okay. So with that, it's 5:30. My time is up for this session, and I'm handing it back to Kushbu for the Q&A sessions, please. Oh, sorry, Pramod, for the Q&A sessions.
Thank you. Just one basic question that I have in my mind. So I will take the other Q&A as well.
Right.
Can you put some light on the organizational structure that you followed that time? Because since you said that you have reached out to 5 centers, and even though we didn't scale more than 5 centers, but even running those 5 centers must not be the easy task at that particular moment. So what organizational structure you guys were following that time to handle and manage? And if you can also tell us about the operational challenges that you guys faced that time.
Right. Ajit and Gaurav, maybe you guys can talk a little bit about that.
Actually, running one school is also very operationally very heavy. So that time you were running 5 centers at the same time. So that's why I asked this question.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, Shrikant, please, you go ahead. And
No, you're the IIM professor, boss. तुम क्या बोलोगे?
Sorry, my phone was fully discharged.
No problem, sir. Please go ahead.
Just come back. If you want me to continue.
Yeah, please. Absolutely. Please continue, sir.
Okay.
We'll come back to the question after this.
Yeah, please continue.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, please. You are.
Can you see me also?
I can't see you, but you're audible.
Disabled by the host.
Okay.
Vidyut, I think again we need to make the host.
Okay, anyway, I'll go on talking. I'm not very photogenic, so you didn't see me. So I was talking about ownership from the other side. I think we need to work on that. And also a succession plan. A succession plan in IIT Alumni Center, as well as the succession plan of the projects. If the persons, the alumni who are heading that project or who are driving it, if there's any change of leadership, how to have a succession plan to continue the project. I think we'll have to think of these things. And again, whether this kind of village knowledge center is relevant today, because there's so much of change in technology and the digital India is a reality now, as well as there's so much of digital education happening thanks to COVID also. And in this respect, I would request our Alumni Association to involve Mr. Ashok Kamath, who is involved in a big way in primary education through Akshara Foundation. So Akshara Foundation was finding it difficult to continue digital education or have digital education in remote places, and where there are no laptops or even telephones with the poor children. So I wonder if IIT Alumni Association can help Akshara Foundation in digital education. That could be your new project. You can think it over. So as far as Village Knowledge Center is concerned, I think your approach may have to change, or your strategy will have to change because of digital revolution, what has happened in the villages. These are my comments. I think I may not be able to join you throughout. I'll be there on and off. Maybe video can cut off, but I will listen to you people.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Ajit, you were talking about.
So I was just, beginning to answer Pramod's question. So basically, the management structure of per VKC was kind of a shared management structure where some part of it was taken care of by the IITB Alumni Association and some part by the village. So, for example, their responsibility was to provide, the room where we can set up the VKC. Then they had to pay the salaries of the caretaker who was responsible for managing the VKC. And our responsibility was to provide whatever these capital investment, computers and go there for intermittent monitoring over there. So that was broadly the way it was managed, and that's how IITBAA is a center that we ran for the most amount of time. The thing, of course, was that, and one of the feedback that learning that we can take from this is that it was still quite driven by us, and the people at the village, I believe, played a supporting role, but we needed a little bit more local leadership if we really wanted to take this to the next level, because it was difficult to travel 50 kilometers every time to go to the village and monitor what's going on. So probably as a learning going forward, maybe we can make more efforts to develop local leadership so that they take initiative and we play the supportive role behind. That seems to be a little bit more specific.
Great. Thanks, Ajit.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Pramod?
Yeah, so let's take the questions by the audience. So Neeraj Gupta has asked one question. If you were to do the same thing in today's environment, how would that be different, given that it needs to make a much bigger impact and is sustainable? So that's really a good question that I was also about to ask. Like, can we do some changes around the model that we considered that time to fit it in the today's environment, and how we would have been doing the same thing again?
Well, I think to set up a center with as a knowledge center, I think it is going to be very much redundant now. I think, primarily because as I've said, that every person now has a smartphone, and with the digital India initiatives, I think everybody has got access to knowledge now. So I think there has to be a certain different model in which this center has to be there, and for what purpose, I think we need to work out. But if it is for I would say anything to do with what do you call encouraging reading habits or imparting education, I think all this is being now done through the smartphones that are available with every individual in the remotest of villages. So I think the center, we need to actually come up with a different concept, different from this. And what it is, I think, is anybody's guess.
Yeah.
Sanjay, maybe you can comment on this.
Yeah, I was actually thinking on the same thing and sort of saying that, of course, you need to contextualize to today's environment, and the needs are different. So it wouldn't be as it was. But I think there's two aspects to it. One is the needs of the village, and the other is from an alumni association's perspective, how we sort of start a project like this, sustain it, scale it, etc. And I think as Srikanth pointed out, it sort of at some point made sense for it to actually be done as a separate organizational unit outside of the AA, because within the AA context, I think this is a project which we ran for about 10 years, and in those 10 years we ran through multiple executive council, change of leadership, both within the chapter and at the head of AA level itself. And through that period of time, we did multiple fundraisers, we did multiple ways to support it. And I think the kinds of challenges we faced inside it, because versus the needs of the project, I think it would have made sense at some point to transition to something outside, maybe as a foundation, so that then that could be given its own charter and ability to sustain. Because I saw it from within, and while we were part of the team, I think all of us contributed to the fullest extent we could during that time. But I think Srikanth, of course, was sort of the sutradhar of this, staying through, leading the efforts, and he was there right from the early days. But I think that is very important for a project to get to sustainability, and I think that's needs to be done as well. Is at some point you need to take a project and transition it out.
Right. Somil, any comments, thoughts?
Thanks. I think, for me, the VKC was really a means to an end in hindsight. It got all of us together. It got conversations, and look at what's happening today. It got a very wide range of people together on a common cause, which are otherwise non-existent. I remember arguing with Sanjay very often कि Bangalore alumni का objective क्या है? हम कर क्या रहे हैं? क्यों मिल रहे हैं हम लोग? Right, and these kind of social causes. So I think I would remove VKC for the question that was there from one of the participants. Remove VKC and let's call it a social cause. And how can IITians, alumni support social causes? And today there are a lot more social ventures and so on. But I think the real value of this is to the alumni and to the alumni association. Of course, there's a value to the villagers and the society, but I think the real value is how if I take this away, if I look at the time that I spent in alumni association for the last whatever years, there's been nothing that's been a common single anchoring project. Nothing. This has been the only one that has energized and got this wide range of people together. So therefore, I would think about that as a model to say, let's find 5 other problems that need to be solved and have 5 other Shrikant Raos and other equivalents to connect and hold, be the Sutradhars for those projects. And I'm sure a lot of alumni will come out of the woodwork, like I did. I was not there. I remember arguing with Samir saying, look, I have not even taken from society. What are you talking about giving back to society? This is many years ago, right? So, I mean, I had a very different worldview that time. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to network. I wanted to get business. And giving back to society was not my objective, but it brought people together. So I would look at this project more as a prototype of how we can get alumni together. And I saw it happening across IITs. I saw all the other IIT alumni associations really come to the fore when we talked about VKC fundraising. They didn't ask, oh, it's alumni, it's a Bombay alumni, so why should we support? Everybody really came out. I think I would look at it in that model. Shrikant?
Yep. Thanks so much. Any other questions?
So one question that somebody has pinged me personally, that can we shift the focus to make VKC as the skill development center? First question. And I will also add something to this thing that Shrikant sir mentioned that somewhere VKC also tried to provide the e-learning or somewhere around live classes, which we see as the reality right now. So there are a lot of startups right now working towards that. But even if I talk about the importance, then as per my personal opinion, it would not be the right thing to say that VKCs are not very important as per today's infrastructure, because the infrastructure is there, but still, if we talk about the live classes or the content which is available in the local languages is very costly as of now. In local languages, so you won't find a very good quality of content. But if we go to these English classes or classes in English or Hindi language, then also the live classes are very costly. But somewhere I realized that you were very near to that point where you could allow the local teachers or the instructors to come to the VKC and train some number of students, and that could provide them the job also, which is paying them a good amount of money. And also we can have a very good amount of local content in the local language. Just my personal opinion. So yeah, the question is about the skill development center. Can we shift the focus to make VKC as the skill development center?
Okay. Anybody in the panel would like to take that question?
Can I make a comment slightly related to this only?
Sure, Paresh.
Yeah. So I think, and this is, I think we have to take VKC also as a kind of example of how do you introduce some new technology in a rural setting. And that is very important. I mean, I have moved to social sector. Of course, Ashok has been there for now 18 years, and Argyam and Akshara and all have been doing that kind of work. But you did it, fair amount of success, then the needs also will change because the computers are no longer that short. But again, for example, now the need will emerge for more computers for e-learning because there will be a lot of this online learning. So again, there may be a need for a different kind of things, and that's what he was mentioning. There are a lot of other practical technologies which need to be introduced, whether it is related to education, energy. How do you introduce them to a village level setting, and then people get trained on it? That is a skill development. Some of our partners in this thing are doing a water conservation, so they're training the local people. There is an IITB alumnus who is doing solar energy. He trains up local people in the upper Himalayas and all the villages there to solar installation. So I think like that, this is something which can be taken up. It is not necessarily continuous. If you run it for 3 years, 2, 3 years, 4 years, but then if the local people get skilled, then that is good enough as a success of model. Other people start copying it. If other people start copying it, that is the biggest success.
Right.
Yeah. Great, Paresh. So to rephrase what Paresh said, let me put my thoughts here, my inputs. If you go back to the previous slide you had, where you have an old lady on the presentation, please. Yes, on the slide, the photographs that you have been running through. For those of you who have not been seeing, can you run that photograph?
Yes, sir.
There's one old lady
Somewhere it is there.
On the
It is,
computer.
yes,
On the
yes, we
center,
can
I
see.
can see.
In the
there is one.
center, in the center, that's a teacher sitting in Bangalore. She is a retired headmistress. Actually, she is my sister's mother-in-law. And she is teaching the students in Itamadu over Skype. And she was talking, she's teaching this when 2009. Right? So we're talking about e-learning now. This was happening at that point of time. Right? If you go to the next slide. No, I think the previous one. Can you go to the previous one?
So that was the success of VKC. It really introduced people to start using it.
Right. Okay. So to summarize, what I think the two aspects to it. One is, of course, what Saumil eloquently put it together. Create a bond between us as alumni, right? Different age groups, different backgrounds, different aspirations. We all got together and did something which we'll always look back on, and we'll never forget this project. So that's one. The second thing is, can we just be the catalyst? I don't think we can really run the organization, but if you can take up a project, be a catalyst, prove that it can work, and hand over a working model so that that can be replicated. It could be training, it could be e-learning, it could be anything. Okay, it could be agriculture, it could be water conservation. There are hundreds of social problems, and if any one of those can be identified, take a small project, sustain it, prove that it is workable, create a model, and then let it replicate. That's my thoughts on this.
I just wanted to just say one thing. You know, actually, Dr. Kalam's vision was to have knowledge connectivity in villages through technology. He never said that. I mean, at that particular point in time, you know, it was relevant that we wanted to have, what do you call, people to get, children to get exposed to computers and all that. And therefore, I think in 2004, 2005, you know, it was relevant. But maybe now, you know, I think knowledge, of course, is so vast that it is, and technology is fast changing. So we need to actually see how we can leverage on that particular concept. Of course, we can say that it's a knowledge center, but then what has to be a part of that knowledge center? You know, I think we need to really find out and then establish. Maybe what somebody was saying about skill development. Actually, that could also be one of the initiatives that could be a part of it. But sustainability is one important thing that one needs to look at, because I think over a period of time, you know, I think if it is not being able to get the ownership of the village or the panchayat, it's going to be extremely difficult to run such centers.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anant. Any other questions, please?
Yeah, so Devesh sir is asking, and I think Sitaram has also asked the same question. I'm trying to club both of them together. So Devesh sir is asking, I had a question for the panelist about the fundraising requirements for the project and how it was done.
Okay.
Well, Srikant, I'll just start one, and then you can actually take on.
Sure. Please go.
See, the first fundraising was actually very accidental. You know, we had the IIT 50 celebrations in Bangalore in 2003, and there was a surplus created, you know, from that particular event, and therefore all the 5 IIT associations actually shared the whatever was the excess amount, and then that was the starting point. So we got something around 2 lakhs or 2.5 lakhs, and then that became the seed money, you know, for the Alumni Association. But of course, after that, I think Srikant Rao and co actually did more challenging, what do you call, jobs, and then they really created the what do you call, the funding, you know, for the Alumni Association.
Yeah, I think Saumil has spoken about the music. Inter-IIT music competitions and so on that we organized, and that was really the methodology of raising funds. we reached out to a lot of other IITians, not just IIT Bombay, brought them all together. We had a blast, we had a great party, and used that to collect funds as well. Right? So we didn't really, at that time, CSR was really not a model as yet. It was all individual donations, and the key was use the IIT brand to extend that.
I think we
any other
Moods and Melodies, which was that music.
That's right. Moods and Melodies.
Then I think also had some surplus from the Golden Jubilee celebration that we did. I think after that, and so yeah, we used whatever means we could to get money.
Yeah, and I think it was all from the Bangalore chapter itself. I don't think we got we leaned on the main.
And we didn't take money from the parent, but we did raise it locally. Though, like someone mentioned, we had a lot of collaboration with other IIT associations in Bangalore.
Shrikant, I think the important thing, since you asked, just this nuance, I want to re-emphasize that while you're raising money for a social cause, you need to align with other people's interests who are not necessarily social. They want to have fun, they want to have a party, they want to have networking. If you align that to this, then it works. If it's only social, you cater to a very small segment of people, and you don't get mass participation or large participation.
Unless it is CSR funding.
No. I think the one thing I kept insisting upon was we don't use funding from sponsorships to pay for the food and the booze, but use that for social cause and let the IITians pay for their own booze and food. I think that worked well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I remember Shrikant sitting me down and giving me a lesson in how IITians can afford to pay 750 rupees for a dinner and music.
Okay. Yeah, any other questions?
Shrikant sir, I think we have covered all the questions.
Right.
Yeah. So I am giving it to Khushbu. So you can take over. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Pramod. Thanks, everyone. It was wonder listening to all the stories, and hope people who have joined the session are excited to join or do some work in this aspect. Although we are running out of time, but we still have one of the speakers left, as this is a very important topic currently. Let me invite Mr. Sanjay Jain to give brief remarks on NEP and Digital India. He is currently working as a partner at Bharat Innovation Fund, also a Chief Innovation Officer at Center of Innovation, Incubation and Entrepreneurship at IIM Ahmedabad. He co-founded NovoPay Private Solutions in the past and also acted as a Chief Product Officer at IITBAA Government of India. Over to you, Sanjay sir.
Thanks, Khushbu. This was a bit of a surprise. I actually saw my...
Sanjay, sorry to interrupt. Sanjay, sorry to interrupt. I am the culprit here because I knew that...
I had a chat exchange with Smita while we were in the middle of the session.
Yeah. The whole idea was we started the VKC, we did a little bit of e-education, but what is happening on this e-education front, especially with Diksha and others, is immense. So maybe you can talk about that, right?
Exactly. So the thing is this, that, as a country, I think in the last 10, 15 years, you've seen a fair amount of advancement on this agenda of digitization and formalization. And, I think the fact that today we've made tremendous strides on many fronts, some of which I've been very, proud to have been associated with, around ID, around payments. In parallel, we have had the mobile revolution, and all of this has given us an opportunity to take the country forward. And the government's policies have sort of also started to take advantage of these changes. And so, for example, Digital India is really about how we use this tailwind of digitization to bring everyone into the formal economy. What else needs to be done as infrastructure to build it? But in this regard, I think some of the other work we have seen around education is the creation of platforms such as Diksha, which allow for the creation of common, they use a digital platform to get all the teachers in the country together to start to build together common curriculum, to, questions, teaching methods, and then have them be disseminated through the schools for children across the country. And what the NEP does is build further on that. it actually starts to also envision and I don't know how it will play out, right? Because it's, I think, very futuristic on how there'll be more autonomy in the higher educational institutions, which will enable us to have a decision making, be local, which allows schools to sort of decide what they want to teach and how they want to evolve. And I think it's a great start, because I think finally, while digitization, etc., has this common thing to go towards a centralization, but I think with giving autonomy to the educational institutions then allows to counterbalance this, to give us the diversity of opinion and views in how we should develop. And I think in some senses, this ties well to the story of VKC, as Srikanth was talking about, because finally, when we went into the villages, I think one of the massive needs that we saw there was around education. And the reason the panchayat was part of this was because they felt this was an opportunity for them to get their kids to go ahead. And that was, I think, and I think the need stays there even today. That, how do you allow the kids to have access to opportunity and prepare them for it in a way that will make sense of the, that will give them a better tomorrow. And I think all of what we're talking about, whether it is Digital India, the NEP, or the VKC, I think are all leading us to that same end. So, I think, thanks Srikanth for bringing this up. It just was a surprise.
No, the idea was, it's not that the project is over and it's gone, right? It was a concept, like what you said, the NEP is a concept, we don't know what's going to happen. That was the stage we were in 2004, as far as the VKC was concerned. So today, if we talk of the CSC, the Common Services Center, it's a reality.
Yeah.
E-learning is a reality. Rural BPOs are realities.
Yeah.
So, and the Digital India is connected. Rural India is now digital. So, and we are all together. We had fun. We're all connecting with each other at any point of time.
So,
Right.
can I just step in here?
Please.
Please, Ashok.
And Sanjay talked about the NEP and Diksha. At Akshara, we've been a very large user of these platforms. Okay. What Diksha has enabled also is the creation of what is called an energized textbook. An energized textbook is nothing but, for example, if you have a chapter on the 4th standard maths book on addition, at the end of the chapter, there's a QR code, which if you scan, takes you to Diksha, where there is additional material that help you learn addition. So far, Akshara's work has gone across 4 states, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Odisha, where a total of 33 million textbooks have been printed with QR codes that lead to our content.
Fantastic.
Okay, so this is there also in IITBAA. I mean, it's just so that right now this COVID thing has kind of put a, you can't even go and explain things in person anymore, right? To those people. This is one. The second is we precluded both the NEP and the digital revolution, so to speak, by a few years, because we started making investments 4 or 5 years ago. So 2 principal things. One is the entire curriculum, 1st to 5th grade math, is available on a low-end Android phone in 9 Indian languages for free. And it's a set of 270 games that is mapped to the national curriculum framework. And it's a set of games, so children just love it. They just consume it like, very rapidly, right? This is a product that's on Google Play Store, and interestingly, it works offline. So someone talked about network nahi mil raha hai. You download it once and you can use it offline, for a long time. We recommend once a quarter sync so that you can get updates and stuff like that. But this product, while we've unbundled it and put it on Diksha, in bundled form, it's on Google Play Store, from where we have had, in the last 24 months, more than 350,000 downloads. And each download for us could potentially mean up to 6 children using it, because we've created the concept of avatars. So up to 6 children can be anchored on it, right? So that's the second one. And the third one is that for reading, which is what the VKC started, you know, the joy of reading, through Pratham Books, which I co-founded. We have a book called Story Weaver, which currently has, my guess is, I stopped looking at those numbers, but we are probably at 23,000 books in 200 languages, all for free, reading, downloads, remix, do what you want with it. But it's available out there. Many places have curated their own libraries based on the content that we provided. I think you can go to our website at prathambooks.org to see the number of users, but I would reckon it's probably hitting 1 million children, 1 million users right now. So whether it's reading or math, two foundational pillars of the new education policy, both of which we have kind of addressed ahead of time using digital technologies as a supplement to classroom instruction. You can never get rid of the teacher in education, especially in early education. I know we never went to class, but in IIT, but that's different, right? But foundational learning, you have to get that socialization with the teacher to learn and, you know, get the habit of learning, you know, as a lifelong habit, right? So we built those three, two subjects, literacy and numeracy, but through multiple platforms available. And, you know, I would urge all of you guys, and these are all free products, there's no cost to it. We built all these products with CSR money. Clearly, there's no monetization of this. There are no, what do they call it? Ads coming in to interrupt you. None of those things are part of the technology platforms that we have. And it leverages Diksha. So eventually I'm seeing, you know, in the next 5 years, 1 billion games being played using Diksha as the platform and the textbook as your scan thing. So that's where, you know, we are looking at. So all of this is available at VKCs, wherever.
Fantastic, Ashok. Super.
It's great to see us come together. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. It's always a pleasure to get connected with the prestigious alumni and hear their story. VKC is one of them, and we would like to take a short step back here by asking, what do you think should be our next step for as a chapter, as a Bangalore chapter? Like maybe you guys can guide us in connecting back and how we should collaborate again and do some stuff in this aspect. Maybe Shrikant sir or Sanjay Jain sir can add some points here.
I would actually go back to what Saumil said, right? I mean, I think find something that drives all of you and do it. And, you know, if it's something that gives back to society, that's great, but don't lose sight of the fact that it's something which is an alumni activity, and bring it, you know, where you can get more participation and all of you can do something good out of it, but get everybody involved.
Yes, sure, sir.
So at one point in time, if I may just add, we had about 25 to 30 alumni actively involved with this project in one manner or the other. There was a core team of maybe 8 or 10 of us or whatever, but I think Gaurav Podwal came to Bangalore well after the project had started. He became an integral part and so on and so forth. So the baton kept passing. And I think the point that Saumil made is very important, and what Sanjay is, I'm just repeating what Sanjay and Saumil have said. Find something that is common across and bring in as many people so that, you know, the baton can keep passing effortlessly. Of course, you need a sutradhar like Shrikant Rao, like everybody said, who ensures that the baton is passed.
Sure. I think in our next EC meeting, we'll discuss on the further steps around this, and maybe connect back to all of you for our steps back and some guidance. I will invite Vidyut to give vote of thanks. Vidyut, over to you.
Thank you so much, Khushbu. Thank you to all the panelists and all our participants. So to start off with, I'd like to thank our wonderful panelists for today's session, for sharing all their insights.
You need a formal vote of thanks. We are all IITB alumni.
Yes, sir. We would like to thank you. Definitely, sir. It's needed for this wonderful session, sir. It's definitely needed.
Okay.
So starting from Mr. VP Baligar to Mr. Ashok Kamath, Mr. Paresh Vora, Mr. Samir Kumar, Mr. Sanjay Jain, Mr. Somil Majumdar, Mr. Siddharth
Majmudar.
Sorry for that, Mr. Somil Majumdar, Mr. Siddharth, Mr. Ajit Fadnes, Mr. Gaurav Porwal, Mr. Anant Narayana for helping us with all his inputs in structuring the entire panel discussion so wonderfully, Mr. Srikant Rao for taking out time to helping us in structuring the entire event, as well as he helped us a lot in reaching out to all the panelists. We sincerely want to thank you, sir, for taking out time from your busy schedule for this invaluable advice and suggestions which you have given to us.
Busy schedule.
Srikant, you're not busy, don't lie.
You all know it, right?
Yeah.
I know
you
you're
guys
busy,
are,
but doing
I
what?
hope you guys are more busy than us.
Special thanks to the chief guest of today's session, Mr. Dhananjay Sahiba, the chairman of IITBA Board of Directors, and our special guests for this evening, Mr. Devesh Khatu, the CEO of IITBA, and Ms. Namita Lobo, officer of IITBA. We'd also like to thank Mr. Ashok Kalbag and Mr. ABS Kumar for joining us for this session. Special thanks to the chapter event organizing team. So Smita Gupta, who is the president of our chapter and the brain behind the event. So the entire event, the structuring of the event, for proposing the idea, interacting and coordinating with all the panelists to making sure that everything goes on as per schedule. So we would especially like to thank her for this entire event. Khushbu Srivastav, the event anchor. Pramod Kumar, the event moderator, who did such a wonderful job in moderating the Q&A session for today's event. Our chapter secretary, Utsav Mukherjee. So these were a part of our chapter event organizing team who has put forward this very, very interesting and engaging session. Last but not the least, all the participants for taking out time from their Sunday family time. So we really appreciate your presence and we look forward to welcoming all of you for the future events of our chapter. And to mention about the point mentioned by Mr. VP Baligar regarding taking forward the discussion with the Akshara Foundation for seeing how this initiative can be taken forward. We already had a wonderful discussion with Mr. Ashok Kamath, and we look forward to executing this event and see how we can take it forward. So thank you all of you for making this such a wonderful event. Thank you so much.
Thanks all of you for
Thank
connecting
you.
with us. I connected with so many people after a long time. And one grouse against Somil, he never gave a vote of thanks like this ever.
Soumil took us to his cricket ground and some track and all that.
Yeah, but
even
no vote of thanks like this.
Somil sir.
So here is like Satte Idli in Nammamai.
Yeah, I think we need to do that again, Srikant. We need to do that again. Once this COVID thing is over, let's go to that Kadu Mane and have that Satte Idli.
Yeah, sure. Should do that. I'm waiting for that.
And then we should go to Ashok Anand's massive villa.
Anand's Palace.
Anand.
Yeah. Most welcome. I think we will have a reunion here, so not a problem.
Absolutely. Every time I drive past nice corridor, I see your house.
Please invite all of us also, sir.
Yeah,
also love to join. The new chapter team as well as the previous chapter team. So all of us, we can have a wonderful.
Yeah. So not to worry. I think as Srikant said, it will accommodate.
Please do not forget us. Include us in the plan.
It will accommodate the entire IIT batch. The palace.
Including the faculty. Chalo, thank you guys.
Okay, bye.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye everyone. Thank you for joining. Bye bye.